We're going to really kind of concentrate now. We've learned in the first two segments basically what TTL is and how it communicates, which is the main thing. And then some of our style and how we actually use the AAV mode. And we meter for a subject, underexpose from there, get our exposure compensation correct, and then worry about the flash compensation. So now we're going to kind of go into, now you understand that maybe the technical thing, but how do you apply that? How do we actually know where to put our wireless flash? How do we know what light we want to use, that kind of thing. So we want to kind of start working into that area. And so as a general rule, we like to use 3 lights as a general rule, if possible. When we're in our studio, we like to use 3 lights. When we're outside, we like to use 3 lights. When you're outside, or even inside here, one of the lights is natural light, the sun, because you're going to have light coming in all the time. So since you can't really control where that light's coming from, you can change the angle of your subject, but you can't really control if you have to shoot this time right now, especially in a wedding scenario where you have the worst lighting conditions in the world generally, because the wedding's at 4 and you have to shoot at 2, you get 15 minutes. We have to really revolve everything else around our sun. So depending on where the sun falls on the subject, sure, we can maybe get under an overhang, we can kind of hide from it, but that's still going to push some light on your subject. So generally that one light is what controls where we put our other lights. We'd like to pretty much, and just kind of show you, when you add this, as the quote just said, when you add flash to taste, you can make it very natural light or you can make it very edgy, and that's probably a good example of the 2 shots. The one in the green grass is just a little bit of underexposed to really bring in that color of that grass, and then just just pop the flash just a little bit to lighten up her eyes, just to show the color of her eyes. Where the one with the volleyball is really, really underexposed, really showing those clouds and that really, really dramatic look.
It's soccer for all you sports fans.
Soccer, yeah, sorry. It shows you I really play volleyball or soccer. But the point is you really see the difference, and it's the same technique. And this is what we want you to get to the point at the end of this workshop, is the control aspects to make these 2 types of images. But not only that, but where would you put the light? How do you know what angle to put the light at? And that's kind of what we're going to fall into this segment, and then the last segment we'll actually be doing it. So when possible, this is the technique we like to use. We like to put that sun behind our client's head because they're not going to be squinting. It's a little easier, and generally it works no matter what, unless you're shooting it at high noon or 1 when the sun is directly overhead. You can find some angle to put the sun behind their head. Unfortunately, it doesn't work all the time because now you're going to be in bad locations, or the behind you is not real pretty. Well, that's where the high-speed sync that we talked about also comes into play, because then you can blur that out as well. So this is the general way we like to shoot. If we only have the 1 light, we'll put the sun behind them and the 1 artificial, and we use that as the main. And wouldn't say flat light them, but we'll put it at an angle where one side is heavier than the other on their face, but there's still some ratio, there's still some light to darkness, but it's not so strong that the ratio is really, really dramatic, unless that's what you want. If we can't do that, we'll do this, or if it's golden hour, sunrise, sunset. You guys up here in Montana and Seattle and even Portland on the West Coast, you have such a softer light than we do down in Texas, and it's to your advantage. This technique is even better for you than us in a sense, because you're going to get those deep blue skies a lot easier than us sometimes, especially the ones here on the coast when the mist comes in, or you even have sunny days like this, but it's still softer lots of times light than you are. The closer you get to the equator, you're closer to the sun, it's going to be harsher. So we like to use in sunrise, sunset, the sun on their face, because the natural light is beautiful. You can't get away from it. It's just one of the most beautiful lights there is. So you want to use that. As I said earlier in the program, we forget to use natural light sometimes, and it kind of upsets us afterwards when we go back and we notice that we're not using that light. So we want to be able to use that natural light as the feel in that golden hour, sunrise, sunset, or if it's a cloudy day, when you just have that nice diffused look across their face, we're going to use that to our advantage. And we can do option 1 or option 2. So option 1 is if the sun is too bright on one side of the face, we want to lighten up the shadows on this side with option 1. Or you can reverse it and make the sun where it's the feel light. So you underexpose to where the bright part of the sun is now the shadow side of their face, and use a brighter flash compensation to make the other side of the face bright. Or we can do option number 2 and make a hair light. As I said to begin with, generally, we'll do both option 1 and 2 in our set. So we'll actually have 2 wireless flash units, because we love, love, love that strong hair light, that strong rim light. We want that fashion glamour look. It's kind of what I taught in the traditional way. Back years ago, 20 years ago when I started, they basically told me with a light meter, you meter your main light, your fill light is 1 f-stop lower, your hair light is 2 f-stops lower. That gives you a nice balance. I never liked that look. I still don't like that look. I want my hair light the brightest light many times in the image. It's the strongest, so that just pulls them out of that backdrop. It really almost makes your images look 3D, almost a high definition if you do it correctly. It's not a high definition because we're only taking one image, but it really pulls them out of that backdrop and makes it look rich and in touch. So we usually do this option 1 and 2 when possible. And we're going to show you later on just how important, just how dramatic a simple hair light will add to your images if you don't use a hair light. So many people when they're going outside, they think they just need the light in their eyes. Just pop the light, and that is the foundation. If we're doing a portrait session, our whole main goal is to get enough color in their eyes so we can see it. Because it doesn't matter what color skin you have, what complexion, what race, whatever, you're still going to have a separation between your eye color and your pupil. And we want to be able to see that. Because that's what people look at. When you're looking at me, you're looking at my mouth or my eyes. When I'm looking at you, it's the same thing. So when you look at a portrait, you want to be able to see the color of their eyes. And they need to be in focus. And so that's my main goal with option 1 here. But then so many people forget about option 2. Because they think they have it, they have the light in their eyes, and so they don't worry about option 2. Well, when you add it, and we're going to show you later in the program just how strong that option 2 is. All right, perfect example is the photo on the left there is without a hair light. And the photo in the middle, you see the hair light with the light, kind of what Cody was doing earlier. He just holds out the light stick to make a hair light. And then we actually cropped it to where you don't see it in the final image, where you don't see the stand, but you see the light. You could even make that look like the sun. We do that lots of times on cloudy, nasty days. We pop it in and it makes it look like there's a sun in the background. And so this is how we use a hair light. And you can see the difference of how she fades into the background. That dark hair fades into the dark blue of that background. And then when you put that hair light, it just brings her out of that whole backdrop. That's what we like to do with all our images. Doesn't matter if it's black hair, brown hair, blonde hair, red hair, it doesn't matter. We want to bring them out. It really, really adds a lot of dimension, and it's extremely easy to do. So here's the other thing that we do, our manual ratio. How we don't really worry about the so-called traditional ratios from 1 to 2 or 3 to 4. You know, is my main at this, and my fill at this, and my hair at this? It gets really confusing, especially if you start adding a main, a fill, and a hair. You have 3 lights like in this example. So this is our football field for our high school, which is Brazos Wood and Brazos Port. We have 2 main high schools down there that share this football field. And it's a cloudy day at this point, but even if it's not cloudy, you can use the same technique. So what we do is lots of times, because there's no sun at this point, it's so cloudy, the sun is really just a giant diffuser over your head. Which, again, in Portland and Seattle here, you get that a lot. So it's actually awesome to shoot in that, because we get it a handful of days like this. And usually it's going to have a huge storm afterwards. It's not just part of the environment. So when we do this, we actually have our main fill and hair as artificial. And we'll put him in the middle, and just by the distance to subject of these lights...
Over here, something.
Yeah. So Cody will be shooting, he's there, and I'll have the main and the fill here, however I want. And so if I'm shooting in an area that has like the football field and I want to shoot him this way and I want this to be in the main light, I just pull that in. And then if I rotate around and I want this angle to be the main light, I'm shooting this way now, so now I'll just pull this in and be the main light. And they're all powering up the same power. And so I can really quickly get my main, my fill, and my hair light all by myself with these stands and with this technique, and you can get a completely different look depending on just how far the distance the light is from the subject. And I know you were asking about this earlier, Malcolm, that's what you were having problems with. And I find when you try to adjust each one, the power on each one, absolutely you're going to get the final results that you want. But when you do it this technique, it happens so much faster. And visually, it's easier for you to remember which one's my main, which one's my fill, which one's my hair light. And you look at your image after you take it, the beauty of digital photography. I don't understand why people don't want to use digital photography. That's part of modern photography, so we should use it to our advantage. If you want a stronger hair light, you'd simply move it in. Don't want that strong hair light, you move it out. Again, you add that flash to taste, not just necessarily on the front of their face, but all the way around.
Yeah, Mike hit on a good point. I know You don't hear it as much anymore, but I know early when digital was just taking off, people that looked at the back of their camera, they called it chimping. And they made it sound like it was a bad thing to look at the back of your camera. Well, it's not a bad thing, and I guarantee you if Ansel Adams had a viewfinder on the back of his camera, he would look at it every time. I mean, it's modern technology, it's a tool, it shows you what your image looks like. You can look at it and get immediate feedback on what you're doing with your exposure and your flash. Don't be afraid to look at it. I mean, don't have somebody say, oh, well, you're not a professional because you spend too much time looking at it. No, it's there because it's a needed tool. And so, I mean, don't be afraid to use it.
Because I'm going to be honest, if digital, we did this technique with film some, but it was we couldn't